Thank you very much for coming out to this session. So my talk today is no rules, no boundaries, no regrets. And it follows kind of my journey in this industry as a career. And I think we can all agree that we spend a lot of our time making money for other people in brand building and that. So this presentation is about how we should spend our time outside of work building value for ourselves. Okay? So it's based on a quote that I use all the time by Mark Twain. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So basically, don't live with regret, right? Always take advantage of opportunities that are in front of you and never build walls that will inhibit your growth. So today, I've got a couple of goals. The main goal is, by the end of this presentation, I want each and every one of you to have a what the fuck moment. All right, like seriously, you're gonna wanna turn to the person beside you and go, really? All right, so that's my personal goal. So help me out with that. We're gonna talk about context, relevance, and expectations. So a long time ago, back when we used waxers and T-squares and whatnot, I went to a design conference in the States, and my agency at the time had moved to a new space. And one of the sessions at this conference was called Creating the Best Design Environment. And I thought, fantastic. This is going to be great. I'm going to be a gratuitous designer for the rest of the conference, and I'm going to see all the rock stars, the David Carsons, and that's going to be awesome. But I really should see something that's relevant. So I'm going to go to this one. 10 minutes in, I left. What this session was about was Chiat Day talking about working with Frank Gehry, creating their new office space, which was millions and millions of dollars. And anybody that's not familiar with Frank Gehry, he designed the AGO. Okay? So here's an ad agency that's saying, we're relevant to you, walking you through this process of how we spent millions and millions of dollars on an office space. And I was extremely upset, angry, and I left because there was nothing that I could take out of that presentation back with me to Ottawa and talk about how we can organize our 2,000 square foot office space, right? So that made me a bit angry. So my point here too is there's a couple of projects I'm gonna walk you through that you're gonna go, what the fuck, okay? But keep in mind, I live in a suburb of Ottawa, in a townhouse, and I drive a Kia, okay? I've made choices in my career and in my life to live a creative life, realizing that I'm not going to be a millionaire. It might happen, that would be lovely, but I'm okay if it doesn't, because I know when I get up in the morning, I've got energy and excitement and passion for what I'm gonna do. And to me, that's worth so much more than money. But in doing a speech like this, that's for me personally, right? But in doing a presentation like this and going to all these conferences, for me, it's important that you as a person in the audience go, yeah, I can, I've got $4,000 that I can invest in myself, not millions of dollars. So that's important. We're also good, get ready, because this is gonna be interactive too. You're making a pledge at the end of this, all right? Warm up a little bit, it'll be good. So, Hillary's gonna love me for this because I'm referencing the new guide on salaries and whatnot. So, if we look at this document, 56.5% of our industry are freelancing at night. This is people who do design full-time during the day. We're going home and we're freelancing, which means we are spending all of our time making money for other people. You know what? They gave me this thing. I should probably use it. So we're spending all of our time making money for other people. Okay, so this really became relevant for me. I built a brand locally in Ottawa called Farm Boy, which recently sold to a large investment agency. And when we did the brand for them, we charged a stupid low amount of money for it, right? And then it sold for millions of dollars. Now, don't get me wrong, they've got a great business, they run it very well. but Loblaws was not interested in Farm Boy because of their ability to buy bananas, right? The brand had a component to this. And for me, I take a lot of pride in that job, but I also have a lot of disappointment in that I wasn't part of that wealth share. So that pushed me along the line of, okay, I need to own what I do. I need to create some stuff for myself. Be a little bit selfish, and it's okay. We're all together here. It'll be all good. You can be selfish. So how do we do this? So I came up with a system that's very simple, and it's called Adaptive Deadline Disruption, or ADD. Why do people find that funny? I don't understand. So what I do is, because we all have ideas, right? That's what we do as designers. We're idea people. We come up with concepts. And it's always those concepts that get crushed. And you go, I wish that would have gone into production. I wish that would have happened. So when we do the ADD application, so for example, I was in a coffee shop, not having coffee. I'm that kind of guy. And I noticed there was art up on the wall, photography. And I thought, wow, that's really nice. And then I looked at it a little bit more and I thought, well, I could do that. I could have a show here. So I went up to the waitress and I said, how do you do this, right? And she said, well, you just sign up. I said, all right, when's your next available spot? And she said, August. This was February. So I said, put me down. I had no photography at that point, at all. Now, I studied photography at college. I loved doing photography. I had the equipment. However, I didn't have any content at that point. But I gave myself a deadline. I was accountable. I had a show coming up. I had to create the content. Otherwise, I would be still here thinking, yeah, I could do a photography show 6 years later, right? Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But I forced it, and that's what this is about, becoming accountable. And that goes down to the second project I'm going to talk about, which is a book that I wrote. And in forcing that deadline, I started telling people about the book. Just a few people close to me, about the idea. And that served two purposes. One was to float the idea, see if the concept resonated, or was it just personal, which is fine. If it's personal, then that's okay. I'll deal with it at that. But suddenly people thought, that's a really good idea. So I said, yeah, I'm going to write a book about that. I'm going to write a book about that to these people. So now I'm accountable. Anytime I saw those people, how's the book going? Shit. Great. It's awesome. I really better get on that. So I'm now accountable, right? So it's forcing me to do this. And it's forcing me into that Mark Twain quote where I'm going to get to a point where it may work or it may not work, but at least I did it. And I can go to bed at night knowing that I tried it instead of shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? That's important. Okay, this is where things get a little crazy. So I'm a frustrated industrial designer. Graphic design was a lot easier to get into because it didn't involve as much math or science. That said, I always wanted to design products and things like that. So I did it on my own spare time, creating products like these. Applying my adaptive deadline disruption. I applied for the interior design show. Okay. I had renderings. I had these guys. You have to be juried into the show. It's a pretty big deal. If you're from Toronto, you know the interior design show in the fall, right? It's kind of a big deal. Shit, I got juried in. Motherfucker. And they said, we love this piece. Okay? And this is a piece that I call Bleeding Heart. And the idea is that it's based on tea being in every culture in the world. And actually, internationally, tea outsells coffee. So my raison d'etre when I work on something is I'm not just going to design a teapot because it'd be cool to do it. Ooh, look, my teapot. there's a reason for it. The last thing I want to do is create something that there's no need for, and I'm creating more landfill. I hate landfill. Landfill drives me crazy. Yes, I'm a package designer. We'll deal with that later. So when I created this, it's like, no, tea is important in all cultures. Tea is important for people. When you sit down, when you think of tea, it's usually with a friend. And you're sitting down and you're talking about personal things. And it's very personal, right? So the idea of bleeding heart made sense to me, where the heart was made out of food-safe silicone. And you would, remember those old change purses that you would squeeze and the slit would open up and you put, right? Okay, so it works on this principle, right? Where you squeeze it, you put the loose tea in, and then you put it into the hot water and it bleeds. So Umbra loved this. But at the time they said, well, we don't really deal in irony. We don't really deal in fun. You know, do you have a garbage bag? Do you have a garbage container? We like garbage container. Oh. But anyways. So IDS happens. So I get judged in based on bleeding heart and kerplunk. So this is a lamp that you hang, okay? And it's based on kerplunk. And the idea is, people from my generation, we used to play kerplunk a lot. It was an awesome game. We're all living in condos now. We don't have a lot of space for shit. So we love looking back on our childhood as well. So here's an opportunity to have that experience, but in a high-end piece of furniture in your apartment or condo. So you've got these glass balls at the top, you've got stainless steel around the outside and these pegs in it, right? They loved it. They loved bleeding heart. You're in for the show. I'm like, God damn, okay. So, careful what you wish for, right? But you got to put it out there to force your hand. Otherwise, these would still be sitting around. Now, that said, I thought, IDS, okay. That's kind of a big deal. Do I want to show up with a teapot and a light sconce? Really? Do I want to do that? I'm up against IKEA, Benjamin Moore, Nine Camper, Dyson, Herman Miller, and Kohler. Okay, and then I started really shitting myself. I'm like, God damn it, what the hell am I doing? And I thought, okay, all right, let's take this like a design project. Let's take this like a client, okay? How do I disrupt? How do I get people to come to our booth? How do I get people to find us interesting? Where it's like, besides, my name's RobertSmith, right? So it's like, right? It's not Zmed or something interesting. It's like RobertSmith, really? Okay, yeah. Same name, less hair. So, and I'm up against Debbie Travis. All right, so at the beginning of the show, when you get in, you've got your pass, okay, and you come into the show, you go through the Debbie Travis experience, which is several rooms that she's designed, and they're lovely, right? And so I'm like, great, this is awesome. So, okay, so again, what am I going to do? Now, not only that, so I get curated in, there are rules, okay? So the typical exhibit rules and things like that, that's fine. But then there's a Debbie Travis waiver. I'm not kidding you. So we had to sign a document that said, we will not approach Debbie, we will not talk to Debbie, we will not have Debbie come to our booth. Do not look directly at the Debbie. If seizures incur, go see your doctor, right? Like it was amazing. I'm like, really? Okay, whatever, so fine. Debbie is Debbie, that's great. So, how am I gonna stand out in this? Right, like, okay, again, I've got a teapot and I've got a sconce. What the hell? All right, we got this. So, I think, you know what? This show is kind of like fashion shows, where you got people that are walking down the runway with fucked up shit like this, okay? Let's be honest, all right? The designers that create this stuff aren't selling this stuff, right? It gets their name out there. It's marketing. They make their money off the Walmart stuff that they're making based on this stuff, but nobody's buying this. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna treat this like a fashion show. I'm gonna create something that's really gonna make people, you know, what the fuck? So, sweet concept. So, literally, when I'm trying to think of an idea, I have a sucker. I kind of like candy. That's another story. So, you know the kind that have the paper stem on them, and you're on it for a little while, and then it kind of bends, and you're like, this is kind of cool, and you're making shapes and shit out of it, right? And I'm like, this is kind of cool. Hey, let's make a chair. Right? You know, you got the seat, and you got the back. I know you're thinking, this guy's got mad Photoshop skills, right? Like, look at that. Pfft, sit down. So I'm like, this is kind of cool. This might get some attention. So I start exploring the idea. All right? So it's called Candy Ass. Right? And so I'm like, this is fabulous. This is going to be awesome. So now I have to inform the show that I'm not bringing a teapot and a sconce. I'm bringing a sucker chair called Candy Ass. And so they went back, they come in, and they're like, fabulous. That's excellent. The name. Do you have to call it Candy Ass? I'm like, well, you know, and they're like, we prefer you not, so it became Sweet Seat. They didn't accept Candy Ass. Okay, fine, so we're good. So then I started exploring, again, frustrated industrial designer. So I'm looking at materials, I'm like, how am I gonna make this? And it's gonna have 4 legs. I want the back to be back in the seat to be really clear so it looks like candy. So we're looking at injection mold Lexan and different plastics and things like that. So I'm doing different explorations. How am I going to bend the back piece? So I learned a great deal, like you can't do that with metal. All right. So then I thought, you know what? Let's make 1 leg. That'll be easier. We'll make it pneumatic, it'll be a task chair, it'll be fabulous. And it's got, you know, 1 leg, which is like the stick. So okay, I'm digging it conceptually, so we're good. So then I start exploring that, and then they're like, well, you know, you can't do this with metal. You can kind of do this, but it's got folds in it to make the air. This will work. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we're dealing with all of this stuff. So now it's time to make a prototype. So I start with size and scale. So I want to look at, like, how big does the back need to be? How big does the seat need to be? You know, those sorts of things. Because there's no YouTube on how to make a sucker chair. All right. So using foam, using different pieces of cardboard and Bainbridge and things like that. So I got to a form that, okay, I can work with this. I should have stopped there. Okay, that should have been the end of it. I was working with an agency in Montreal who make stools. And we were talking about the plastics and what kind of plastics could I use to get the green, to get the see-through, to get all the things that I wanted. And I got to a point, first of all, it was like, holy crap, expensive, right? Because I'm making a one-off. And then I thought, well, screw this. It's a sucker. Fuck it, we're gonna make it. Right? What the fuck? Right? There it is. There it is. All right? So, again, reality. This is me in my kitchen, 2 pasta pots, a crap load of sugar and whatnot, and this was the mold that I sent to a manufacturer in Ottawa that created. I had to go to 2 different places. One made the mold out of MDF, okay, with a plotter. And then I had to send it to an automotive company who then painted it with a paint that would resist the heat of the candy. Because again, that's not something that I knew. I'm not a candy maker, right? So it's like, holy crap, that shit's hot, right? So there's only certain things you can do. And again, with the wood, it expands and it'll absorb. And I needed to get the form out. And it was like a whole lot of technical problems. So I created this. I worked with this agency to create the mold. So here we are boiling in 2 different pasta pots. One of them did not survive. The other one did. The IKEA one didn't. There's the mold with the automotive paint, okay? So you can see the form. And then this is a piece of aluminum that was the size of the structure that I had made. And I wrapped it in wax paper, slid it in. There's the candy inside. It took a crap long time to dry. And there's the seat. Now again, maybe I should have stopped. Okay, but because we do packaging for food products at our agency, Green Melon, www.greenmeloninc.com, I had to figure out the nutritional facts. All right, so if you were to consume the entire chair, right? It could happen, right? It could happen. So you know what? The good news is if you're in a low-fat diet, go for it. You're good. If you're a diabetic, you will die. All right? So there's no fat. Awesome. There's no cholesterol. Excellent. Carbs, 320% of your daily intake. Okay? It's a crap load of stuff. So I figured, okay, I got to do that. And you know what? This is going to be kind of funny because it'll make a great backdrop. I'll have the chair, and then I'll have the nutritional facts. Who the hell else in the show is going to have that? All right? So in the media room, when they come in, I had a jar with green suckers in it, and I had a sign that said, come to booth, I forget the number, for the only piece of furniture with taste. Right? Not only did that work, but I could see very quickly and very easily who had been to my media spot, because they all had suckers in their mouths. It was like a flag. So I'm watching, going, okay, you've been there, you've been there, you've been there, and I would like chase them down. So then I had to design the booth. So again, costs. Very expensive to do a booth. So I went to IKEA. I bought 3 billy shelves, 2 long narrow ones, 1 wide one. I had digital outputs made for these pieces, okay? And what worked out brilliant is they're shelves. And I was using the back of them, so the other side was full of shelves. So I could keep my lunch, I could keep all the suckers I was giving out. I had everything all on these shelves, and these people with these thousands of dollars pop-up booths were like constantly looking for somewhere to put their stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I got that, right? And it's flat pack, so getting there was awesome. And then the guys cleaning up, like, you want a shelf? I'm like, yeah, totally, there you go. It was brilliant, it was great. So here we are constructing it. There's the billy shelves, 1 big green wall, and the booth with sweet seat. So, everybody else at the show, I got to know them very well. Oh, you're the guy with the, yeah, okay. Were cleaning their furniture with Windex and Pledge, okay? I was literally using Pam. Pam was my shining thing. I'd put it on at the beginning of the day and it would give it a really nice luster. Pam, yeah, that happened. So, did it work? In a show like that, with the W. Travis experience and IKEA and all the other people, I ended up the top 5 things to see at the show in Azure magazine. The cover of the National Post of the top things to see at the show. Blogs, and the icing on the cake, who's that? Right? Literally, I'm sitting at my booth and I see this gang of people making their way over. I'm like, oh, something's going on, must be some media, something. I'm like, talking to somebody else, whatever. Whatever. And then out of this mass of people, Debbie Travis comes out. Robert, I heard about your lolly chair. Did you? Come on over, right? Do you mind if I take a picture? Oh no, fabulous, it's great. And so she's there, and I wanted to get a picture of her licking the chair. I thought that would be kind of awesome. It's a lolly, right? Yeah, no, she declined. But everybody else in the booths around was like, how did you, we're not allowed to even look at her. Like, what the hell, right? And I'm like, hey, she came to me, I didn't do this. So that was awesome. So, next project, a few years later, is a book that I'm selling here, by the way. I went through quite a few years of depression. And wow, it got serious all of a sudden, right? Like, oh, we were talking about suckers, now it's like serious, I don't know. I went through some pretty serious depression. And doing what we do, we like to analyze and understand where we're coming from, what's happening, right? And I needed to do that. And so I did a lot of research and figuring out what's going on with me. And I don't have a timer. Okay. So I did a lot of research, looked at a lot of books. Are we here? No, okay, never mind. And there was a huge hole in understanding depression, what it is, and that, without taking the leap of going to see a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, which there's a huge stigma on. So I thought, I'll just go to Indigo and I'll look at books. And like every book, they fit into two categories. One is everything is rainbows and unicorns, and you'll be fine. And I just wanted to punch those people in the face, okay, because shit was not fine. And the other are from doctors, PhDs and whatnot, and using terminology and shit like that. And I'm a designer. Where are the pictures, right? Like, no. So, like, okay, there's a hole here I need to. And in explaining it to myself, I understood that what I was suffering from was situational depression. So there's situational depression and there's clinical depression. And clinical depression is something that needs to be treated medically, for the most part. Whether you prescribe to medication or change in lifestyle with food, things like that, but it needs to be dealt with at the chemical level, okay? Situational, more about tools and strategies in understanding your situation, and that's what I was going through. What I was going through is, as a parent, I was feeling very bad about how I was raising my kids, and although I was a scout leader and a soccer coach, and we were doing stuff all the time, I always saw parents doing other things that I think I should be doing, and I didn't have the time. So I thought, well, what is it that I'm going through? And what I realized was I was taking little bits and pieces of the parents around me, and particularly because I was a soccer coach and a scout leader, I had a lot of parents around me, so I had a lot of exposure to different lifestyles. And this family over here were a soccer family. This family over here were a hockey family. And this family over here were an academic family. And so forth, swimming lessons and that. So I would say, well, shit, my boys aren't into hockey, which is like a horrible thing for a Canadian parent, frankly. But they didn't want to, so I'm like, okay, that's fine. And so I felt bad about that. And I felt, my kids did well at school, but they weren't, excelling. So I thought, okay, well, I can be doing better there. What I didn't realize was that the hockey family's kids didn't do very well at school. And the kids that were academic didn't do any sports, right? So I created this monster, this fake parent that I was judging myself against that never existed and couldn't possibly exist. But I was still judging myself against this. So I'd created a Frankenstein monster, bits and pieces put together into a form. And when I came to that realization, I thought, well, that's something that really resonates. I'm really into horror, so it certainly resonated with me. But for me as well, it's very internationally recognized as a thing. People understand when you say Frankenstein monster, they get it. So I thought, well, this is good. And I also realized as I was going through it that this is something that we do in our careers. We do them as sons and daughters. We do them with our partners. So it's something that we do in our life, and it's just because we're human. And particularly now, with the internet and Facebook, where everybody, and I think it's very apropos that it's called Facebook, because it is very, surface, it's very face, right? So everybody's putting the best of themselves out there, and we're absorbing that, and we're creating these monsters. So I embarked on a catharsis process whereby I was going to write about it. Writing about it makes it real. It's going to bounce around your head forever. But the minute that you write it down, it becomes real. You can't ignore it. It's there, staring at you. So you need to deal with it. So I looked at the original book. This is Mary Shelley's original, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. So what I created was what I called the Frankenstein Condition, or the modern perfectionist, because that's what we strive to do. There's so much pressure on us right now to be innovative, groundbreaking, doing something new, doing something unique, that we can't possibly ever live up to that. And it becomes difficult and, again, creates depression for people. So we look at the word Frankenstein. These are from the dictionary. So a person who creates a monster or a destructive agency that cannot be controlled or that brings about the creator's ruin. Okay? And the idea of a condition, the circumstances affecting the way in which people live or work, especially with regards to their safety and well-being. So to me, that made sense. Okay, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. So process meets product. So this presentation is more about the process and not the actual content and how we deal with our monsters in our lives. I will be doing one of those, but this is more about how we, as a creative industry, how we manifest things, manifest concepts and ideas. So in this case, process meets product. I've never written a book before. I'd never made a candy chair before. So how am I going to do this? Well, I know that I'm easily distracted. Okay, I'm like that dog in Up. And so writing a book, like seriously, that's not going to happen. I get too distracted easily, right? So how can I disrupt that process? How can I make this happen? Because I think it's really important. And I think there's so many people out there that are struggling with situational depression that just need some reality and not rainbows and gnomes and shit, right? It's like, no, you're in the dark. I get it. So we're going to get through it. So anybody that looked at my bookshelf when I was researching this would go, dude, this guy's really fucked up. Look at the books, right? But a lot of it was about, again, health and understanding and seeing where other people are. And again, looking at, okay, I'm going to create a product. So how do I create something that's unique and different and that will resonate with people? And it doesn't have to resonate with everybody. It just needs to resonate with certain people. And you know, there's certain people out there that are just being missed in this situation. So let's look at that. So literally the book is written by hand. So I'm not a typer, I'm a handwriter, right? So how this worked is, and we all know in the creative process, you get distracted and you get days where you're just not creative or whatever, and we accept that. So what this helped was when I was really feeling into it, I could write pages and pages and pages by hand, right? But when I got to a point where I couldn't write anymore, it was the time to transcribe this onto the computer, right? So I wasn't feeling creative, so it's like doing production art, right? You're not creating, you're coming up with the concept, you're just executing. Put your music on, it's all good. It's a very cleansing process. So that's what I found with writing. I'd make notes for myself, and then I'd be typing away, because I wasn't feeling particularly inspired at that point. So I'm just typing away, and as I'm typing, I'm editing, spell checking. And by the time I had written about 3 or 4 pages in, transcribed, I was back into it again. I was in the moment, because I was already reading what I had already written, and it started sparking other ideas. So that helped. The next thing that helped was dragging Dictation on my iPhone, which I brought everywhere with me when I walked my dog. This is Java, she's lovely. So we'd go out for long walks, and I'd be talking to my phone, freaking neighbors out, of course. And the wonderful thing about Dragon is then I could then email myself that file, drop it into Word, spell check it, and again, it helped me push the process forward. Other people, they could sit in front of a computer and type away and write that way. That wouldn't work for me. So, this is what I had written as an overview for myself. So let's get this out of the way. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or even a psychic. I'm a business owner, creative director, and professional. As such, my job is to take complex concepts and articulate them in ways that can be easily explained. I'm also a son, father, friend, and unexpectedly an author. I say unexpectedly because it was never my intent to write a book. In fact, the Frankenstein Condition was something that I created to help contextualize my own personal struggles, and that was it. Nothing written down, it stayed in my head for years, but helpful. So why Frankenstein? I realized that the source of my depression came from self-worth. I didn't feel like I measured up to everyone's expectations. But what I'd really done was taken pieces of other people and created something that I was comparing myself to, a person that didn't exist. It was an amalgam of many people, an abomination, a monster. Okay, so that's what I used as my catalyst. I would remind myself as I was writing the book. And it became the Frankenstein Condition, or the Modern Perfectionist. Now, being a horror fan, what inspired me while I was working as well was the work of Bernie Wrightson, who is I'll go back. So I used the idea of of Frankenstein as chapter heads and as an ongoing theme. So we have things like, hello, my name is Victor. So that chapter is about, we need to accept the fact that we're Victor. We're the ones that created this monster. Our parents didn't do it, our friends didn't do it, nobody did it. We did it ourselves. So we need to accept that to move forward. The monster, so we break down the monster into things like celebrity skin and the brain and the heart and all these things. It's like an autopsy. And then in the laboratory, we talk about things like drug shaming, chemical imbalance, things like that. How do we deal with these on a chemical level? Also, self-medication. Shocking to me, my psychologist said, so how do you deal with these feelings when you have them? And I said, well, I don't do drugs. I don't drink to excess. So I guess I kind of deal. He said, there's nothing that you do. I said, well, the only thing I do is I have a Monster every morning. You know, the energy drink? I have that every morning. And she wrote down self-medicating. And I said, whoa, no, I'm not doing coke or, you know. Like, no, it's just a Monster. She said, you're taking something to counteract how you're feeling. And that might be food. That might be shopping. That might be energy drinks in the morning. Okay, and those are the most difficult to deal with because they're not regulated until your bill comes back at the end of the month, right? So, Bernie Wrightson. For those of you who don't know who Bernie Wrightson is, he was a big influence on me as a kid growing up, and that because he worked with Stephen King. He designed the monsters in Ghostbusters. You know, he did album covers. He was the co-creator of Swamp Thing. This was one of his creations, the librarian from Ghostbusters. And I'm like, this guy's awesome. And he's a phenomenal illustrator, right? So this is an example of one of his illustrations. Crazy. So he had, at one point in his career, dedicated 7 years to illustrating Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the original text. It was a personal project, something he felt very, very attached to. And this is the book that came out. And this is part of what inspired me. So I would have these images out with me, even to the point, okay, I'm a designer and I'm gonna have to come clean. The book wasn't even done yet. I was doing layouts. I was doing spreads. I had to do it, right? So I was popping his illustrations in. So when it got to a point where, okay, this is real, I'm getting, I'm into the layout, I've got an editor who's editing the book for me, who, by the way, and this was very intentional, never saw Bernie's work. All she received from me were Word documents. Because it was really important for me that this book stand on its own, that it could be just a photocopy, and it would make sense, and it would translate well. Then when I showed her the illustration, she had that what the fuck moment. She was like, holy shit, where'd these come from, right? So it just, So it came time where I'm doing the layout, and then it's like, now I have to find an illustrator. We have a wonderful illustrator in the studio, no problem. But then I thought, well, you know what? Bernie Wrightson, he's a guy, right? I'm gonna send him an email. 4 emails later, he said, yep, go for it. I got the full rights to use his Frankenstein illustrations for the book. 1 week later, he passed away. Yeah. The last episode of season 7 of The Walking Dead was dedicated to him. So this was one of the last things that he approved before he passed away. And for me, that was like, I have to finish this book. There's no going back now. This is going to happen. So I went through and I chose illustrations for the various chapters. So hello, my name is Victor. Why Frankenstein? The monster. This shot here, I was just using this section for in the laboratory. Villagers with torches. Okay, villagers with torches, that chapter is about the internet. And opinion. Okay. So each chapter would start, so this is the monster chapter. It starts with this illustration, and each chapter starts with a quote directly from Mary Shelley's book. So in this case, it's by the dim and yellow light of the moon, as it forced its way through the window shutters, I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster whom I had created. Okay? And then I get into the chapters, and then we go from there. And this is the final product that you will see upstairs. So typographically, I Frankenstein some fonts. There's a serif, there's a sans serif. The tracking's all fucked up. The cover is die cut, so these parts of the body are die cut. And what's showing through is some of this bullshit we get in our email. The 7 things that entrepreneurs do every morning before they go to work. 5 things that Steve Jobs ate before he went to work. 7 things, and they're so definitive, right? It's like, no, this is gonna work for you. No, it's not. How could it possibly? We all have different metabolism. We all have different makeup. We all come from different heritage. You can't be that decisive and say, yes, here are the 10 things that you should do before lunch, and you will be regular. So I pulled all of these, and frankly, a lot of them are from Dr. Oz. Anyways, that's another thing. So those are the things that influence us, right? And that's why they show through on the die cut, because they're part of what we make our monsters out of. So we go full circle. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones you did do, okay? Now, hang on. How much time do I have? Anyone? How much time do I have? It's 3:15, and I have till? I have 15 minutes. Bonus material. Okay. Here we go. Okay, we're going to go fast through this, and I'll go back. Okay. All right. I had this just in case. Okay, this guy. Okay. Good-looking guy. Kind of looks like normal, whatever. Okay. So this is Shane Carruth. Anybody know who Shane Carruth is? Okay. So studied mathematics. Okay. He's a software developer. He does flight simulation software. That's his thing. He decided one day, you know what, screw this, I want to make a movie. Didn't study film, didn't go to school for film, he went to school for mathematics. All right, so he wrote, directed, produced, he was a cinematographer, the editor, and the music composer for a movie. He spent $7,000, okay? Made the movie Primer. Okay, I suggest you see it, it's on Netflix. It made $424,000 in the box office, but more importantly, it won the jury grand prize at Sundance. Okay, so here's somebody who's making software for other people, making money for other people, and he said, you know what, I want to make a movie. And he learned it online, he studied the masters, he looked how Hitchcock did a shot. How does Spielberg write dialogue? How does Scorsese build drama? He took all of that stuff in, and he wrote the music, and he wrote the script, and he starred in it, and he spent $7,000, okay, not out of the realm of possibility, to make this film. And really, the fact that it made $400 and some odd thousand is secondary. Because really, at the end of the day, he could just say, check, I made a movie. And for me, with the book, it's the same thing. Check, it makes my mom super happy. Now, side note though, I gave it to her to read before it got published. And by the way, this is the first place that it's been available. So my parents read it. I'm Catholic. I've got to get their approval. And so they called up and they said, your book is really good. I'm like, oh, thank God. It's really good. It makes you think in that. And then my mom says, okay, but I have a couple of problems with the book. Oh, here we go. She said, well, you know, there's a couple of times in the book that you swear. And I said, yeah. Now I had that moment like, oh no, did I say fuck at some point? I'm like, no, I don't think so. Yeah, so at one point in the book you say asshole. And then another point you say bullshit. And I'm like, That's intentional, Mom. And she goes, really? And I said, yeah. I said, look, there's so many of these fluffy whatever books that are, again, generic for everybody, and I didn't want to write that book. This book is in your face, and it's about me, and frankly, I swear. So it's in my voice, right? And you need that hit every now and then in the book to say, like at one point, I think the first sentence in one of the sections is, perfection is bullshit. First sentence, right? And I think that she's like, ugh, like good, that's the direction you need to have, right? You need that slap in the face. Now, okay, now pay attention, there's a test later. All right, speaking of tests, everybody ready? Okay. We're gonna make a promise. But you're only gonna do it if you're gonna commit to it. So if you're not gonna commit to it, don't do it, okay? This isn't like, well, everybody else is doing, so I'm gonna do whatever. No, okay? Only do it if you're gonna commit to it, okay? You're gonna take your left hand on your heart, okay? Right hand up. There we go, all right. And repeat after me. I promise to go home and create a plan to invest in myself. Okay? And to buy Robert an ice cream sandwich. No?
An ice cream sandwich.
Nice.